The rain had stopped 3 hours ago, but the cemetery grass still squelched beneath Ivy Martinez's black heels. She stood at the edge of strangers mourning a man she'd barely known. Thomas Martinez. Gambler. Dreamer. The father who sent birthday cards 3 months late with someone else's name crossed out. The priest droned Latin while Ivy counted water droplets sliding off the tent. 27. 28. Each one racing toward the edge like her father raced toward bad bets and broken promises. Miss Martinez? A thin man in an expensive suit stood beside her, briefcase gleaming like threat. I'm Gerald Hoffman, your father's attorney. We need to discuss urgent matters. The office smelled like old paper and fresh disaster. Hoffman spread documents across the desk, numbers swimming before her eyes. $2.3 million. She whispered. Your father's debt to Beck Ho Enterprises. The contract is binding. Upon the debtor's death, obligations transfer to immediate family. Beck Ho. Everyone in Koreatown knew that name, knew the shadows it controlled. Your father offered unusual collateral when traditional assets ran out. A marriage arrangement with his daughter. The room tilted. He sold me? As collateral for extended credit. 1-year marriage contract in lieu of monetary payment. If I refuse? Standard collection. Assets seized, wages garnished. Your mother's medical care would be affected. The door opened without warning. The man who entered redefined the word dangerous. Over 6 feet of controlled power in a black suit that cost more than her car. But his eyes, dark as Korean winter nights, those stopped her breath completely. Shin Jae-won, Hoffman whispered, the Ice King of Seoul. They said emotion had been carved from him the night his fiancée died. They said he hadn't smiled since. He studied Ivy like calculating profit margins on damaged goods. Smaller than expected. Your father claimed you were accomplished. I teach kindergarten. Something flickered in those midnight eyes. Children. Interesting. His cologne wrapped around her. Expensive wood and danger. Your father's promises to me are kept. Always. $2.3 million. Miss Martinez. Cash, property, or alternative arrangements. The marriage. Contract marriage. 1 year. Live in Seoul, attend functions, play the required role. After 12 months, the debt dies. What about my mother? She has cancer. Seoul's best oncologist. Asan Medical Center. All expenses covered, separate from our arrangement. Why help her? A resentful wife is useless. A grateful one performs better. I need time to think. Tomorrow, noon. He placed a black business card on the desk. If I don't hear from you, standard collection begins. Your mother's treatment ends. At the door, he paused. Your father thought your goodness might redeem his failures. We'll see. That night, Ivy sat beside her mother's hospital bed, watching machines breathe for the woman who'd raised her alone. Elena Martinez had been beautiful once. Now cancer had stolen everything but the fire in her eyes. Mija, her mother whispered. You look tired. The funeral was today. Her mother's expression didn't change. She'd stopped caring about Thomas Martinez years ago. Did he leave anything? Ivy almost laughed. He'd left a $2 million nightmare and a marriage contract to Seoul's most dangerous man. Nothing important, she lied. Her mother's fragile hand found hers. You're a terrible liar, Ivy. Always have been. Later, alone in her studio apartment, Ivy stared at the black business card. Shin Jae-won. No title needed. His name alone opened doors or closed them permanently. She thought about her kindergartners, 24 5-year-olds learning to read, to share, to tie their shoes. They needed her. But not as much as her mother needed treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. The choice was no choice at all. The next morning, Ivy called before she could lose her nerve. A woman answered in Korean, then switched to perfect English. Tell Mr. Shin I accept his terms. A car will collect you in 1 hour. Pack light. Everything else will be provided. 1 hour to end her life as she knew it. Ivy packed her mother's photo, her favorite book, and her grandmother's silver necklace. Everything else seemed meaningless. The car was black with windows so dark, the world disappeared. The driver said nothing during the drive to LAX. Nothing as he handed her a first-class ticket to Seoul. Your husband is waiting, was all he said. Husband. The word followed her across the Pacific. through 13 hours of flying toward a future written in someone else's handwriting. Seoul Airport was glass and efficiency. Another silent driver, another black car, another journey through rain that seemed to follow her everywhere. The city rose in neon and steel, a maze where she'd never find home. The building touched the clouds. The elevator rose until her ears popped. The penthouse doors opened to reveal a space more museum than home. Everything was black, white, and chrome. No warmth anywhere. Jae-won stood at the windows, watching the city spread below like a conquered kingdom. He'd changed into black slacks and a black cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "You came," he said without turning. "Did I have a choice?" "There's always a choice. Sometimes they're just all bad." He turned then, and in the stark lighting, she could see him clearly. Early 30s, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass. Beautiful the way predators are beautiful. "Your room is down the hall, third door, clothes and necessities already arranged. Tomorrow night, black tie hospital fundraiser at the Shilla Hotel. Already playing the loving wife? Playing the appropriate wife. Love isn't part of this." He moved to a crystal bar, pouring amber, liquid that caught light, like trapped fire. "Rules," he said, not offering her a drink. "You don't enter my office. You don't ask about my business. You sleep in your room. I sleep in mine. In public, you smile, you touch my arm, you play the devoted wife. In private, we maintain distance. For a year. 365 days. Then you're free. The debt dies with the contract. What about my mother's treatment?" He showed her a tablet. "She's been transferred. Cedar-Sinai's best oncology team. All expenses covered regardless of our arrangement." Relief nearly buckled her knees. Whatever else this cost, her mother would have a fighting chance. "Thank you." He looked at her sharply, as if gratitude was foreign currency. "This is business. I invested in your father's promises. Now, I'm collecting returns. Returns being a fake wife. Returns being a necessary facade. My world requires certain appearances. A wife suggests stability. Things that make men trust where they shouldn't. So, I'm a prop. You're a tool. Useful for specific purposes." The words should have stung, but Ivy found them oddly freeing. If she was just a tool, she didn't have to care what he thought. "When does the performance begin?" "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. A stylist will come at 4. He left her alone in the vast living room. Ivy found her room, bigger than her entire apartment. The closet held clothes with Italian names, all in her size. The bathroom had products she'd only seen in magazines. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul glittered like scattered diamonds. Day 1 of 365. The next evening, Ivy learned what transformation meant. The styling team descended with military precision. Her hair twisted into an elegant chignon that pulled at her scalp. Her face became an expensive version of herself. The dress was black silk that poured over her body like dark water. When Jae-won saw her, he evaluated the result with the same detachment he might review quarterly reports. "Better," was all he said. The car ride to the Shilla was silent. Jae-won typed messages in Korean with sharp, efficient movements. When they arrived, he offered his arm. "Smile," he murmured against her ear. "You're supposed to be happy." His arm was solid warmth beneath expensive fabric. He led her through a lobby dripping crystal into a ballroom where Seoul's elite mingled like exotic birds. "She's pretty," one woman said in Korean, not knowing Ivy had studied the language. "Pretty enough," her companion replied. "But can she handle him?" Ivy kept smiling, her hand on Jae-won's arm, playing the devoted wife while understanding fragments of conversations swirling around them. He was different here. Still cold, still controlled, but performing his own version of Shin Jae-won. At dinner, she sat beside him at a table full of men who looked at her the way her father looked at cards. "Your wife is charming," one said in accented English. "How did you meet?" Jae-won's hand found her knee under the table, warning pressure. "Through mutual connections. Sometimes fate requires assistance." The men laughed. Ivy sipped wine that tasted like old money and listened to them discuss numbers that meant nothing and everything. Halfway through the evening, Ivy escaped to the powder room. Her reflection looked like a stranger in designer armor. When she emerged, Jae-won was waiting in the hallway. "You're doing well," he said. I feel like I'm drowning. You're swimming. There's a difference. Is there? He moved closer, and she caught that scent again, dangerous and addictive. In my world, the difference between drowning and swimming is the only one that matters. Someone rounded the corner. Suddenly, Jae-won's hand was on her waist, pulling her against him. His body was hard planes and controlled strength. He smiled down at her, and for one heartbeat she saw what he might have been before. Tragedy froze him solid. Play along, he whispered, then louder. There you are, Yobo. Yobo. The Korean term of endearment sounded like beautiful lies in his mouth. The stranger passed with a knowing smile. Jae-won released her immediately, warmth replaced by familiar distance. We should return. The rest of the evening blurred together. More faces, more names, more of Jae-won's hand on her back, guiding her through conversations like a choreographed dance. By the time they left, her feet screamed in designer heels. In the car, Jae-won returned to his phone, the performance over. You did well, he said without looking up. Do we do this often? Once or twice a month. Sometimes more during conference season. Back at the penthouse, she kicked off the torture devices, pretending to be shoes. Jae-won loosened his tie with one hand, pouring whiskey with the other. The first one is always hardest, he said. Does it get easier? No, you just get better at pretending it is. A week passed in strange routine. Breakfast in silence while Jae-won read reports in 3 languages. Days exploring Seoul or video, calling her mother. Dinners alone or with a man who looked through rather than at her. She learned his patterns. Black coffee at 6 a.m. sharp, gym from 6:30 to 7:30. He ate the same breakfast every day, 2 eggs over easy, with wheat toast, no butter. His phone rang constantly in Korean, sometimes Mandarin, occasionally Russian. Late at night, she sometimes heard him in his office, voice raised in languages she didn't understand. Once, she heard glass shatter, followed by silence so complete it felt like held breath. The second event was a gallery opening in Gangnam. This time, Ivy was ready for the styling army, ready for the performance. She smiled, touched Jae-won's arm at calculated moments, made small talk with women who hated her for being young and on the arm of one of Seoul's most eligible men. But something was different. Jae-won drank more than usual, his jaw tight with tension she couldn't identify. Then Han approached. Older, scarred knuckles, eyes like a pit viper. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Jae-won, Han said in Korean. It's been too long. Jae-won's entire body transformed into a weapon waiting to strike. Not long enough. Han's gaze found Ivy, sliding over her like oil. Your new wife. She's lovely, delicate. Like the last one. Jae-won stepped between them, a wall of barely controlled violence. Careful, he said softly, and somehow the quiet word carried more threat than a shout. Han smiled, showing too many teeth. Just making conversation. It would be a shame if history repeated itself. Yes, Jae-won agreed, voice deadly soft. It would be a shame. For you. Han laughed nervously and melted back into the crowd. We're leaving, Jae-won said. In the car, he vibrated with rage, staring out at Seoul's neon rivers. Ivy could feel violence radiating off him like heat. Who was that? No. One. He mentioned your last. I said he was no one. They rode the rest in silence that felt like a held breath about to shatter. At the penthouse, Jae-won went straight to his office, closing the door with careful control. Ivy heard glass breaking, something heavy hitting the wall. She should have gone to bed. Should have followed the rules. Instead, she knocked softly. Go away. She opened the door anyway. He stood at the windows, one hand bleeding from what looked like punching something that punched back. Crystal glittered on the floor like tears. You're bleeding. I've bled before. That doesn't mean you have to keep bleeding. She found first aid supplies, returned despite his glare. When she took his hand, he flinched but didn't pull away. The cuts weren't deep, but glass embedded in his knuckles needed careful extraction. She worked in silence while he watched with those midnight eyes. Why? He asked finally. Because you're hurt. I hurt myself. That doesn't mean you deserve to stay hurt. Something shifted in his expression, ice cracking to reveal pain beneath. Minji would have said the same thing. My fiancé. She believed people deserved kindness even when they didn't earn it. What happened to her? Silence stretched until she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. She died because of me, because I loved her, because my enemies knew I loved her. Ivy's hands stilled. Han? Among others. They took her 3 days before our wedding. By the time I found her, there wasn't enough left to save. Just enough to identify. J1. Love is a luxury I can't afford anymore. It's a weapon others use against you. So you froze yourself. I survived. Is there really a difference? He looked at her sharply. She'd echoed his own words from that first event. You should go to bed, Ivy. It was the first time he'd used her name. It sounded foreign on his tongue, like tasting something forbidden. She left him standing in the wreckage, understanding now that his coldness wasn't cruelty, it was armor. And armor that thick only made sense if what it protected had once been unbearably soft. The next morning, everything had shifted slightly. The coffee maker had a second mug waiting. J1 didn't look up from his tablet when she entered, but he'd made her tea exactly how she liked it. Thank you, she said. He nodded, still reading. But when she sat down, he pushed the pastry box toward her. Her favorite, from the bakery she'd discovered wandering Myeongdong. You had me followed? I have you protected. There's a difference. But he'd noticed her favorite pastry. That meant something. 2 months passed. They developed a rhythm that wasn't quite friendship, but wasn't the cold distance of the beginning either. J1 still worked impossible hours, still drank alone in his office. But he started joining her for dinner more often, asking careful questions about her day. She learned he spoke 4 languages fluently, had a master's from Wharton, could play piano but hadn't touched one since Minji died. He liked his bulgogi spicy, his whiskey neat, his silence complete when working through problems. He learned she sang in the shower, couldn't cook anything beyond instant ramyeon, had a thesis on childhood development half finished. She called her mother every day, at exactly 7 p.m. Seoul time. They orbited each other like careful planets, maintaining safe distance while feeling inevitable gravity. The crisis came on a Tuesday. Ivy was walking back from Korean class when she noticed the man following her. Baseball cap pulled low, but he'd been 3 steps behind for 4 blocks. Her heart raced, but she remembered Jaewon's instructions. Stay calm, find a public space, call the emergency number. She ducked into a Paris baguette, pulling out her phone. Before she could dial, the man entered. Up close, she saw the scar, bisecting his eyebrow, the tattoo creeping up his neck, not Jaewon's man. Mrs. Shin, he said in accented English. Mr. Han would like to speak with you. I don't know any Mr. Han. Sure you do. Met him at the gallery. He's very interested in getting to know you better. Fear tasted metallic on her tongue. My husband isn't here, but don't worry. We'll make sure he knows where to find you. He reached for her arm. Ivy threw her hot coffee in his face and ran. She made it 2 blocks before they caught her. 3 men, efficient and practiced. The van door sliding shut sounded like the end of everything. They didn't hurt her physically, but they tied her hands, put a hood over her head that smelled like other people's terror. The drive felt endless but was probably less than an hour. When the hood came off, she was in a warehouse that looked like a drama set. Hans sat in a leather chair like a discount throne, that snake smile spreading across his scarred face. Mrs. Shin, how lovely to see you again. J1 will kill you for this. Possibly. But first, he'll understand the message. Han stood, circling her chair like a predator. Your husband took things from me once. Family members. Territory. Respect. I thought it was time to return the favor. I'm nothing to him, just a business arrangement. Han laughed. Is that what he told you? How practical, but I've been watching. The way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. The way his hand finds your back in crowds. The way he started smiling again. Just tiny movements when you're near. You're wrong. Am I? Let's find out. He pulled out a phone, dialed, put it on speaker. J1 answered on the second ring. Han. I have something of yours. Silence. Then, in a voice Ivy had never heard, low and lethal. If you've touched her. She's unharmed. For now. But that could change. You know how fragile people can be. How easily they break. Just like Minji. What do you want? Everything you took from me. The territory in Busan. The shipping routes. The respect. And I want you to kneel when you give it to me. Fine. Han's eyebrows rose. That was easy. You have something I want. I have things you want. Simple transaction. Not that simple. I want to see you beg. Shin Jae-won. The Ice King on his knees, begging for his wife's life. Just like I begged for my brother's before you put a bullet in his head. Time and place. Warehouse District, Building 47, 1 hour. Come alone, or she dies badly. The line went dead. Han looked at Ivy with satisfaction. You see? Not nothing to him after all. The hour crawled by. Ivy's wrists went numb from the rope. She thought about her mother, about her kindergartners, about J1 drinking alone. She'd never get to tell him she understood now that his ice was just frozen tears. When he arrived, he walked through those warehouse doors like he owned them. His face was carved marble, terrible, in its complete stillness. His eyes found hers immediately, scanning for damage. Let her go, Han. This is between us. No, she's part of it now. Your weakness, just like Minji was. Han pulled out a knife, running it along Ivy's cheek without cutting. Should I start here? Mar that pretty face? Stop. Jae-won's voice cracked slightly. You want me to beg? Fine. He dropped to his knees, the sound echoing through the warehouse. Shin Jae-won, who knelt for no one, was on his knees on dirty concrete. Please, he said, and the words sounded torn from his chest. Let her go. Take everything else. The territory, the roots, my life if you want, but let her go. More, Han demanded, drunk on power. Tell me how much she means to you. Jae-won's eyes met Ivy's, and for the first time since she'd known him, they were completely unguarded. Raw. Real. She's everything, he said quietly. She made me remember what it felt like to be human, to want tomorrow, to believe I could be more than what I became after Minji. His voice broke completely. I can't lose her. I won't survive it. Not again. Han laughed, victorious. The Ice King, melted by another pretty face. How pathetic. That's when Ivy noticed the movement. Shadows becoming men, surrounding the warehouse. Not Han's men. Jae-won was still talking, still begging, keeping Han's attention focused. I'll give you everything, the entire organization. Just let her walk out of here. No. I think I'll keep her. Let you know she's alive somewhere. Suffering. That seems more poetic. Then you'll have to kill me. Because I'll never stop coming for her. Han raised the knife. That can be arranged. The windows shattered simultaneously. Black figures repelled through, precise and deadly. Han's men didn't even reach for weapons before they were on the ground. Jae-won moved like liquid violence. His hand caught Han's wrist, and the crack of bone was audible. The knife clattered away. You made 2 mistakes, Jae-won said conversationally, pressing Han to his knees. First, you assumed I'd really come alone. Second, you touched my wife. Han's face was white with pain and fear. You said, you begged. I told you what you needed to hear, to keep you talking. To give my men time to get in position. He leaned closer. Did you really think I'd let you take her? That I'd kneel for anyone who threatened her? She's just a debt payment. You said so yourself. Jae-won's laugh was dark as winter midnight. I lied. To her. To myself. To everyone. Because loving her meant putting her in danger. But you already did that. So there's no point pretending anymore. He looked up at Ivy, still tied to the chair. Close your eyes, Yeobo. She understood and obeyed. The sound was quick, final. When she opened her eyes, Han was on the ground, unmoving. Jae-won was cutting her bonds with Han's knife, his hands infinitely gentle. Are you hurt? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. He pulled her against him, and for the first time, his embrace wasn't performance. He was shaking, she realized. The immovable Shin Jae-won was shaking as he held her. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. I tried to keep you safe by keeping you distant. I failed. You came for me. I'll always come for you. Always. Even if you run. Even if you hate me. Even if you leave when the year ends. I'll always come for you. The year isn't over yet. No, he agreed. It's not. He kissed her then, in a warehouse that smelled of gunpowder and violence, surrounded by his men securing the scene. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, claiming, a promise and a possession. She tasted whiskey and want, felt the control he always maintained shatter completely. His hands framed her face like she was something precious he was afraid might disappear. His mouth moved against hers with desperate hunger, like a man who'd been starving finally allowed to feast. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he said, the words sounding rusty from disuse. "I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But you carved yourself into me when I wasn't looking." J1. "You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel it. But I needed you to know." He drove her home himself, ignoring his lieutenant's protests. His hand found hers over the gear shift, holding tight like she might disappear. At the penthouse, he drew her a bath, adding salts that smelled like lavender and safety. When she emerged, he was sitting on her bed, head in his hands. "I should let you go," he said without looking up. "Cancel the contract. Send you back to Los Angeles, where you'll be safe." Ivy sat beside him, taking his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I don't want to be safe. I want to be with you. You don't know what you're saying. My world, it's nothing but danger and death." "Then teach me. Teach me to protect myself. Teach me to be the wife you need, not just for show but for real." He studied her face like memorizing a prayer. "You would stay? Even knowing what it means?" "I would stay because I know what it means. Because I know you'll protect me. Because I know the ice was never real, just the pain underneath it." He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. His hands skimmed her waist, pulling her closer but still careful, still treating her like something that might break. "Stay tonight," she whispered against his mouth. "Just stay." He stayed. She woke to find him watching her, the morning light turning his sharp edges soft. "Creepy," she murmured, but she was smiling. "Beautiful," he countered, tracing her cheekbone with one finger. "I forgot what it felt like to wake up happy." Over the next weeks, everything changed. They still ate breakfast together, but now his hand found hers across the table. They still attended events, but now his touch lingered, real instead of is performed. He still worked late, but now she sometimes joined him, grading Korean homework while he dismantled someone's life over the phone. He taught her to shoot at a range in the building's basement. Her hands shook the first time. "Breathe," he murmured, standing behind her, steadying her arms. "Don't think about pulling the trigger. Think about protecting what matters." What mattered was him, she realized. Somewhere between that funeral rain and this moment, he'd become everything that mattered. Her mother visited for a week. Elena Martinez took one look at how her daughter looked at the cold Korean man and smiled. "You love him," she said, not a question. "It's complicated. Love always is, Mia. The easy kind isn't worth having." Watching J1 carefully help her mother navigate the Korean menu, ensuring she could eat everything with her weakened stomach, Ivy felt her heart crack and remake itself into something that fit him perfectly. 6 months in, she found him at the piano he claimed not to play. His fingers moved across the keys like remembering a prayer, the melody sad and beautiful. "Minji's favorite," he said without looking up. "I thought I'd forgotten it. Do you think she'd be happy that you're trying again?" He considered this. "I think she'd call me an idiot for taking so long." "She sounds wise." She was. He shifted, making room on the bench. "But you're wiser. You saw through the ice to what was underneath." "A man worth loving," Ivy said simply. He taught her the melody, their hands sometimes overlapping on the keys. The music filled the penthouse with something that hadn't been there before. Hope, maybe? Or just the sound of two people learning to be whole. 8 months in, Ivy discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the test, mind racing. They'd been careful, mostly, but there had been nights when careful was the last thing either wanted. That night, after he'd kissed her senseless in the warehouse, they'd barely made it to his bedroom. His hands had shaken as he undressed her, like unwrapping something precious he was afraid might break. When he'd pressed her into the mattress, whispering Korean endearments against her skin, she'd understood that the ice had never been real, just a man trying not to feel. Now, staring at two pink lines, she felt the weight of consequences. J1 found her sitting on the bathroom floor, the test in her hands. "Jagia, are you sick?" She held up the test. His face went through several expressions, finally landing on something between terror and joy. A baby? I know it wasn't part of the contract. He pulled her to her feet, kissing her until she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't remember why she'd been worried. Forget the contract, he said against her mouth. Marry me, really marry me. Not for a year, not for a debt. Forever. The year isn't up yet. I don't care about the year, I care about you, about this. His hand settled on her still flat stomach with reverence. About us. Yes, she said, because what else could she say to a man who'd learned to thaw for her? 10 months in, they married for real in Jeju. A small ceremony with just her mother, his nephew who'd become like their son, and a few of his most trusted men. Ivy wore white this time. Jae-won smiled through the entire ceremony, that Ice King persona completely melted. I thought I knew what love was, he said in his vows. But that was just the first draft. You're the final version, the one worth dying for, worth living for, worth changing for. You saved me, Ivy said in hers. Not from the debt, from a life half-lived. From never knowing I could love someone so much, it physically hurt to be away from them. Their kiss tasted like promises kept and futures building. A year to the day after that funeral, Ivy stood in the same penthouse, but everything was different. Color had crept in through photos on the walls, toys scattered from Jae-won's nephew's visits, life growing inside her. Jae-won entered with papers in his hand, the contract, their original marriage agreement. A year, he said. As promised, he tore it in half, then quarters, then smaller pieces until contract confetti floated between them. That debt died the moment I realized I loved you, he said. Everything after was just me being too scared to admit it. And now? Now I'm still scared. Scared I'll lose you. Scared I won't be a good father. Scared I'll fail to protect what matters. He pulled her close, hand spreading over the small bump of their child. But I'm more scared of living without you. No more ice, Ivy promised. Only fire. He kissed her, and she tasted their future. Dangerous, definitely. Complicated, always. But warm, finally warm, in a penthouse that had learned to be a home. 2 years later, Ivy watched Jae-won teaching their daughter to play piano, his patience infinite, his smile constant. The Ice King was a memory, a story they'd tell their children someday. The rain was falling again, like it had at that funeral. But now it sounded like music, like promises, like the rhythm of a heart that had learned to beat again. Jae-won looked up, catching her watching. His smile was everything the ice had protected, everything the cold had preserved, everything the warmth had finally freed. Sarangai, he mouthed over their daughter's head. I love you in Korean. I know, she mouthed back, because she did. Because he showed her every day in 1,000 small ways. Because the man who'd counted her worth in debt payments now counted his worth in her smiles. The debt was paid, the ice was melted, the love was real. And in a penthouse high above Seoul, where the rain played percussion against the windows, a family that shouldn't exist thrived in defiance of all the odds. Some debts, Ivy had learned, were just destiny in disguise. Some contracts were just love waiting for signatures. And some, Ice Kings were just broken hearts, waiting for the right flame to teach them to burn again.